You're going to make me tear up, and then I won't be able to talk at all. Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you who attended. This is our 4th annual event, and we have to thank some people. The very first people we need to thank is the Malvern Retreat House. They came to us 4 years ago and said, how would you like us to do a retreat for you? And I said, that'd be great if it's free. And they said, no problem. And so every year, that's a monumental gift to all of us, and a sit-down dinner, the whole bit, which shocked me the first year because I didn't know it was a sit-down dinner. Someone came up to me after that dinner and said, this is the first time someone has treated me with respect since I lost my job. So first to Malvern Retreat House, then to the volunteers and Jospehs people. There are more than 100 volunteers in all of the 14 chapters. And while this is a wonderful day, I had very little to do with it. Liam and Dave and some of the others who put this together interfaces to make this work, and John Senek and the others. So today I'd also like to mention that I am the co-founder of Jospehs People. The idea for Jospehs People came from Joan McRae, who is still with us, but in her 80s and unable to travel, so she can't come. But there was a third person involved in Jospehs People, and we just lost him this past week, Monsignor McManus. When Joan had the idea for Jospehs People, McManus was the pastor at St. Joe's in 1995. And she went to him. He had just come off being a chaplain in the military. I don't know if you know much about being a chaplain, but when you're a chaplain, you're everything to everybody all the time. So he understood perfectly what she wanted to do and gave us a very nice donation and said, go forth. And I walked out of Mass the next day, thinking we'd be here for a year. This is our 20th year of doing this. So when the good Lord's done, he's let Monsignor McManus go. So today's Mass, by the way, we will dedicate to Monsignor McManus. We always begin with a prayer, and I'd like to begin with the Mother Teresa prayer. I have a personal love and dedication to Mother Teresa because in many ways I feel a very distinct and profound joining with what she did in the streets of Calcutta. People have asked me what's different about Jospehs People than other groups. What's different about it is that although you are all here as a group right now, and you are all possibly in groups of our chapters, we're worried about you one by one by one by one. So we're concerned that you have a job and it's a family supporting income, but we're also dedicated to making sure your mental health, your physical health, your family, your kids, that you have food on your table and a roof over your head. And that is, I think, the primary difference between our organization and others. It doesn't make them bad, it just makes us somewhat different. So if you will, I'd like to begin with a prayer that is written on the wall in Mother Teresa's home for children in Calcutta. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish and ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others can destroy overnight. We all in this room know that. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. I really like that prayer.
So you'll notice on the slide there that I have my title listed as Everyday Person. So Dave just talked about my role, my career at BlackRock, what I've achieved as a professional. And that's what I do. I'm not going to talk to you today about what I do. I'm going to talk to you today about who I am and how I think who I am is what has made me able to achieve all of this and do what I do. So we're going to start with this saying, what we are is God's gift to us, what we become is our gift to God. Now you may recognize this as a cross stitch, a needle point. It's in actual size, it's about this big, framed, and it has sat on my desk in every role on every desk I've ever had in my entire career for 30 years. And it was given to me by my mom when I graduated from college and got my first job. And it has really grounded me in that whole idea of who I am. And whether you believe wholeheartedly in God or not, whether you believe in karma or the universe or spirituality, whatever it is you believe in, this sort of says to us, we are created as individuals that are perfectly imperfect, and what we do with those gifts we are born with, and what we do with the experiences we have over the course of our lives, is what we give back to the world, what we give back to the universe, what we give back to the people around us. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that as we go through our time together. But first I want to ask everyone, does anybody recognize this book, The Secret? I see hands, I see nods, yep. Okay, so The Secret was a really famous and popular kind of craze several years ago. She was on Oprah, there were calendars, there were books, there were stickers. It was kind of kooky. I missed the memo. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what's the secret, right? So I called up my best friend and I said to her, what is all this about The Secret? Like, do you know this book? And she said to me, yeah, I've read The Secret. You should read The Secret. You'll like The Secret. So I went, I got it, I read it. I called my best friend back up, and I said, that's the secret. Karma. Do unto others. That's the secret? Who didn't know that? Everyone knows that's the secret. And I said to her, and if we would have realized that other people didn't know, we could have written The Secret, and we would be millionaires. But clearly, we didn't think of it. So the point is, there are several books that may inspire you. And we have one up here, The Four Agreements. But when you're in a position in your life where you're searching, you're trying to find that trust and confidence, it can come from anywhere. But you have to seek it out. By coming today, you're seeking it out, right? And I think that not every book is going to resonate for everyone. I read The Secret, I was like, ho-hum, what? You know, wow. Couldn't believe it. She was on Oprah. Why can't I be on Oprah? But you need to look for it. You need to constantly seek and search until you find that thing that resonates for you. So The Four Agreements is a great little book, not a big time commitment. It's about actually living life and how to live a better life and how to be a better person. And I really love this book. I've gone back to it several times and read it, but it's really thin, so it's a nice, easy read. Another book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is an oldie but a goodie. 7 habits, these are professional and personal, and it resonated with millions of people, and it may resonate with you. Another book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, another craze from several years ago. This is about communication and how different people communicate differently and how we can communicate more effectively with each other. And then Getting to Yes. This is about negotiation and selling, right? A bestseller, millions and millions of copies sold, and it clearly resonated with a lot of people. But you know what? It depends on the point you are at in your life and what you're looking for. And you can go out, I mean, now we've got the internet, we've got Amazon, you can read little excerpts of books and see if you like something. But the idea is to find something that resonates, that's going to inspire you. This last book is called Rising Strong. It's by a woman named Brené Brown. We're going to talk more about Brené Brown this afternoon. But this book is about overcoming obstacles. It's about rising strong from failure or from being knocked down. And I will talk a lot about Brené Brown, so I will leave it there, but she is actually someone that I admire a lot. For me, there was a book several years ago called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Many years ago, I was a young woman and in a place where I felt like my comfort zone was definitely not where the magic was happening. Definitely not. So I felt like something had to change. I felt like I was stuck and I couldn't quite figure out what it was or why wasn't I where the magic happens. I have to get where the magic happens. So I read this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's about turning fear and indecision into action and into power and into love. And I read it, and it really resonated with me, and it inspired me to get a haircut. Now, you might not think that that's that big of a deal, but this was the head of hair I had. Now, don't laugh. Julia Roberts was a big thing. We all know the Pretty Woman story. I'm sure many of you ladies had this haircut, so don't pretend. And I decided that I would get this hair completely cut off, and it was even shorter than this. So I went to the salon and I sat down in the chair, put my hands on the side of the chair, and I thought, closed my eyes and put my head down and thought, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And I could feel the scissor kind of going across the back of my neck, and I was like, oh, is it too late to stop? Maybe if I just, but I went through with it. And you know what? It was a small thing. Hair grows back. But for me, it was a big thing. I needed to find that confidence and that courage to make that decision, and I found it in this little book that somebody recommended to me. So you never know where you're going to find it. And what I learned about cutting my hair was that that hair had a lot more to do with me hiding behind something than I realized. And it turned out to be one of the greatest things I did in my early 20s was to shed this hair that I had had practically my whole life. So I have a key question for you. As you consider your next step, whatever it is you want to get to, different job, new job, finish the transition, leave the baggage behind you, whatever it is you're wanting to move toward, who is the single most important person in your quest? The single most important person. Right, you, exactly. That person is going to get you there, and they're going to keep you successful. And there's one thing I know for absolute certain, and that is, if you don't believe in yourself, your success will not be sustainable. That's the first thing I know for absolute certain. You must believe in yourself. And I'm going to talk about how you do that, because it's not a light switch. Okay? It doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one day and flip a switch and all of a sudden, I'm good, I got it, I got this, right? You don't wake up every day and flip the light switch on and you're bathed in the beautiful light of self-belief. That just doesn't happen. It takes work, it's a process, it takes practice, and when you feel doubts creeping in, and believe me, we all feel doubts creeping in. We all feel them. I'm going to talk to you about the ways that I hold those doubts at bay and keep my light switches in the on position. So I said it's a process and it takes practice, but let's be clear. Practice makes progress, not perfect, right? You're not going to be perfect. That's not what you were born to be. Practice makes progress, not perfect. Say that 10 times fast, right? It's a little bit of a tongue twister. But there are three pieces. For me, there are three pieces to this. The first is know your goal. So when I was 26 years old, I found myself divorced. I had gotten married. It was the first decision I had ever made without my parents' help or approval, and it turned out to be a disaster. So as I sat home on my couch in Whitestone, Queens, petting the dog that I insisted getting in that divorce, I got custody of the dog, crying and wondering, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And at 26 years old, I really did feel like I had made a colossal mistake. I felt like I was broken by it, and I wasn't really sure what was next for me. But I decided, you know what? What do I really know I want? Because at this point in my life, I'm not sure that I can ever really find somebody that I am willing to give my heart to, somebody that I am willing to connect myself to permanently. What do I really want for myself? And the thing that came into my mind was that I wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to be a mom. From the time I was a child, all the way up until that girl sitting on that couch crying, I knew that was the one thing I knew was that I wanted to be a mom. So I said to myself, okay, if I don't have a significant other, if I haven't overcome this brokenness that I feel I have, by the time I'm 32, I'm going to take steps and I'm going to become a single mom and I'm going to do this on my own. And what do I need to do that? I need a good job. I need good credit. I need to be able to buy a home or a condo because, you know, I need to be able to support myself and this child. I need to make myself a viable candidate for adoption. So how am I going to do that? So I went to the bank. I had some debt from my first marriage and from my divorce. I went to the bank and I took a bill consolidation loan. Now, I don't know if anybody ever took a bill consolidation loan back in the early 90s, but back then, you would go to the bank with all of your credit cards and you would sit across from the person, the bank person who was giving you the loan. And mine happened to be a woman. And I sat there with my credit cards and she had a really sharp scissor. And she had a stack of checks and she had a stack of letters. And the letter was, "Dear Amex, I'm closing my account. Here's the balance." Snip. I signed the letter. She put my 2 pieces of my Amex card, the check, and she sent it away. MasterCard, Macy's, like all of my credit cards. Snip, snip, snip. I told no one. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell my friends. I didn't tell my brother, who is my best friend. I told no one. I got in the car, drove home from the bank, and I cried. And the tears were shame. How did I get myself into this situation? But there were also underlying tears of joy because I knew I was taking a step away from what was and towards what I knew I wanted, which my goal was to be a mom. So it starts with knowing what you want next. And sometimes that can be a really simple, small thing, or it can be a long-term thing, but know what you want, whether it's in this moment, this day, this month, this year. That depends on where you are in your journey, but take the time to figure out and know your goal. You also have to know your guidelines. Now, these guidelines may change over the course of your life. They may, or they may stay relatively the same. Mine have stayed relatively the same. When I was looking for a job, my first job in Manhattan, I grew up on Long Island. It's about 50 minutes away from the city. Suburban girl. This reminds me, you know, a lot of where I grew up. You know, it's not the big city. So when I went into the big city to look for a job, my mother was horrified that I was going to work in Manhattan, but I was going to do it. And I was looking for a job in public relations or advertising, which is what I had a little experience in. Parts of the city that had public relations and advertising firms were like icky back in the day, like, yeah, right? So I started looking for jobs and I realized, like, I'm a single girl, I'm in Manhattan, I want to feel safe. And my priorities, my guidelines start to change a little bit to, you know what, location is really important. So I wind up getting a job. And I call my mom and I say, "Oh, I got a job." And she says, "Oh, what is it?" I said, "Oh, it's in financial services." And she says, "Financial services? You said you didn't want to work in financial services. You said you wanted public relations or advertising, financial services. You don't even like math," which I don't. And I said, "Well, I don't want to work in financial services, but the office is across from the Plaza Hotel." So, you know, and who knew that decision, based on the guidelines that I had in my head, which was to get a place where I could work and be safe and earn enough money to get me towards my goal, would wind up the beginning of what has turned out to be an awesome, amazing experience and career. So know your guidelines. That's the second thing. The third thing is know your non-negotiables. These are things that guide you in your decision making. They are your security when you are in doubt about if what you're doing is right or wrong, or feels good or not, or is making you feel comfortable. So my non-negotiables. These, I've kind of formulated these in my mid to late 20s and into my 30s, and I swear they have not changed since. And I still go back to these when I have decisions to make or when I'm feeling not quite settled. These are work-related, but they're also personal. So the first is the work will stand on its own. Now, as I was preparing for this today, I looked up, I typed that in to see if there were quotes or something, or a photo, something that I could use. And it turns out that Meryl Streep has a quote that says, in the end, the work will stand. So I felt really good, you know, me and Meryl, like this, right? But to me, this means that if I put out a quality product, if I have done my best and really owned the outcome as best as I possibly can, the work is going to stand on its own, no matter what's happening around me. People can talk, people can tear me down, people can have opinions, there can be politics at the office, there can be drama at home. But if I am putting out a quality product, whether that is this quality product or whether it is this quality product, the work will stand on its own. I have to put my head on the pillow at night. I am a very black and white, right or wrong person. Things are right or they're wrong. I feel them in my gut, and I know when I'm feeling like I'm doing the right thing. I make sure that the company that I work at is aligned with the values that I hold close to me. I make sure that the people I surround myself with share the values that I share. And there have been painful partings along the way, professionally and personally, because if I feel like I'm being kept up at night, I'm not going to keep going down that path. The third thing is we're not saving lives. This is about perspective. I am not a brain surgeon. I'm not a heart surgeon. I'm not saving lives. I work for a financial services firm. We are very serious about what we do at BlackRock. We're an asset manager. We build a better financial future for our clients. We are a fiduciary. What we do is very important, but I am not responsible for the cooler that's in Seattle with the heart in it that needs to get to New York to put in the transplant, to get into the transplant person who's going to die without it. That's not my job. So it's really important when you're faced with a decision, when you're faced with shifting sands and you're not sure what to do next, that you remember perspective, right? We're not saving lives. Nobody's dying. Let's not make more out of this than it needs to be, right? Because sometimes we spin ourselves up and it distracts us from what we should be focused on. I have a go-to suit. So I remember the first suit I ever wore the first time I got a job out of college. It was the 80s. It was red, and I don't know if everyone knows, but red is a power color. So when you wear red, that's a very strong color. And this particular suit, I got my first job in it. It was red. I wore it on special occasions like it was a Superman cape. I kept it in my closet long after it went out of style. And it was the 80s, so it didn't take that long for it to go out of style after it didn't fit. I finally parted with it. And to be perfectly honest, sometimes I wish I hadn't. Sometimes I wish I could take that suit out of the back of my closet because it reminds me of the first time I landed a job that I really wanted, and it just makes me feel good. I also have a go-to perfume, of all things. You can't even imagine it, right? My go-to perfume, I got offered the job of being the head of international HR out of our London office. And I did not have my passport was expired at the time, and my husband did not have a passport. But we decided that we would go for it. So we went to London, and 2 weeks later, I had my first international business trip to Japan. I might as well have been going to Mars. This is a girl from Long Island. What am I doing? I'm going to Japan, right? I have my passport. I'm like, oh, you know, what do I do? And I'm meeting my boss from New York, who gave me the opportunity to go to London and be the head of HR, who believed in me. She's a mentor, she's a sponsor, and she's my boss. And I love this woman, and I have so much respect for her. So I go to Japan, and I realize that I forgot to pack perfume. So I buy perfume in the airport, and I wear it that whole week. And I kept that bottle of perfume and I would wear it on days when I wanted to really kick it, when I wanted to just really be great. I have it on today. So it can be anything. Sayings. I'm sure all of you, I love the Mother Teresa, the prayer. I've read that several times, and hearing it, it gives me goosebumps, and it's just so inspiring. But for me, for a really long time, the serenity prayer, and still is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. That's about acceptance and courage and wisdom. And who doesn't need that, right? So that's a good one. Another one is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. When we redid my 11-year-old daughter's room, she's 14 now, we painted this in 6-inch block letters across the whole wall. She was trying to be competitive in basketball, and I wanted her to know that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And then the final one, courtesy of my mom, adversity builds character. Sometimes I wish I didn't have so much character. But when I was growing up, my mom, anything that happened, my mom would say, adversity builds character, Ree. Adversity builds character. So that's also one of my favorites. You may have a go-to memory, something that, a time when you really doubted yourself and you overcame something, or a time where you just were happy, and that can be your go-to memory. You can go back to that place and be that person. When you feel those doubts creeping in, you can cast your mind back to that success. You may have a go-to song. This is a song, we all have them, right? It comes on the radio, or you hear it on your iPod, or you happen to hear Muzak in a store, and it's your go-to song. I find music to be incredibly inspirational, and sometimes it helps me go inside myself. And of course, you have to have your go-to people. These are the people that are going to kick your doubts in the butt. They are going to help you have your perspective and get focused and centered again. And you need to choose your go-to people wisely, right? Sometimes they're hard to come by. They don't all have to be living. My mom, who's pictured on the left, is passed, and she is still a huge go-to person for me, even though it's coming up on 20 years. She is a huge go-to person for me. On the right is my cousin Kathy. She's 6 months younger than me. She's like a sister to me. We both had our children at the same time. She has twins that are now 17, and I have a son who's 17. And she decided to be a stay-at-home mom, and I decided to be a working mom. And when I tell you that, you know, David talked about my career, and I've told you I was in London, head of HR, and all of these things. And you know what my goal was when I was 26 years old. So being a working mom has been a really challenging thing for me. Very conflicted. Is this what I should be doing with my time? Is this the best I should do for my kids? Very conflicted. And when I've been conflicted, my cousin decided to stay home, and she stayed home for the first 13 years of our oldest lives. And I would call her up, and I would tell her, I'm just feeling so conflicted, I don't know if this is the right thing, and she would remind me all the opportunities that my kids and my family had as a result of my work. She would remind me all the things that I do at work that make me who I am, and the impact that I have. And likewise, when she would call me and say, like, this stay-at-home thing, I just want to, like, I'm done, I would say, well, wait a second. Think about what your kids are getting through this stay-at-home experience. You have to have your go-to people. Now, there's no picture of my husband up here because he's here in the back. So my husband, I knew you would see him, so I didn't put a picture of him. But certainly, my husband, who is my final husband, as I like to call him, not my second husband, my final husband, is certainly, he probably wishes I wouldn't go to him so much. But anyway, he is definitely somebody that picks me up when I need it. So we're going to do a little exercise. You have in your blue folders a piece of paper that says your go-to list. And we're just going to take 5 minutes. This is really just for you. If you don't want to share anything, you don't have to think about whether you have a go-to song and a go-to person, a go-to memory, or a go-to perfume, or cologne, as the case may be, a go-to book, whatever it is. So let's just take 5 minutes to take a little moment to just reflect, even if you don't write it down, just reflect on those things that you think could pick you up when you have those self-doubts that are creeping in. How did that go? Anybody have anything they want to share?
My favorite saying is, never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It's by Margaret Mead.
Love it, love it. That's a great saying. I hope everybody heard that. Yeah, never doubt that a small group.
A group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Anybody else?
Just a personal saying that I have for myself is to never give up.
Never, never give up. It's a really good one.
Yeah, forgive. Heard a speech, I guess, last week by a lady named Ava Kaur, and as horrific as my relative's Holocaust experience was, she was one of Dr. Mengel's twins, and she found a way to forgive
Forgive.
the Nazis, and she said
Yeah.
it was so liberating. And I heard her say it, and of course my experience is nothing at all like that, but I realized I hadn't forgiven my boss, and it wasn't hurting her.
Right,
Boss who really screwed me.
right.
It wasn't hurting her, it was hurting me.
That's right. Forgive. And let it go, right? Just, anybody else here?
Right out of Gone with the Wind, tomorrow is another day.
That's right. Tomorrow is another day. This too shall pass. I used to have that on my refrigerator. This too shall pass, right? So I'm glad that you find, you've gotten some inspiration from that. And these things, I encourage you to, keep at them. And again, songs are a really big one for me. So now, once you've done the work on figuring yourself out, right? You know your goal, you know your guidelines, you know your non-negotiables. Remember my 3 tenets, right? You've turned your light switch is all in the on position, right? We're in a bright light. It's perfect for our skin tone. It's great. And you have your go-tos that are going to be there for you when the light starts to dim. What does it take to keep all that, to keep those lights in the up position, to keep yourself feeling confident and to have trust in the future? How do we get to a place where we feel that we can have the trust and confidence to take on the world, even though it's a really, really scary place sometimes? It's not easy. But another one of my go-tos, see, I was holding out on you. Another one of my go-tos is TED Talks. Does anybody know, as few people know about TED Talks, TED.com, right? So I use TED.com for a few reasons. If I have something that I want to learn about in particular, I've heard something specific and I want to learn more about it, I might go to TED Talk and Google. If I am puzzling over a problem and I'm doing what I call my Rubik's Cube thing, I'm just turning and turning and turning and turning and I feel like I'm not getting anywhere, I will go to TED to take my mind off it, right? And I'll pick something off the homepage completely randomly to just give myself 14 minutes to 16 minutes to just stop for a minute and refresh. Listed here on the slide are the top 5 in a list of top 20. We're going to talk extensively about the Brené Brown talk on the power of vulnerability. All of these are pretty good. I love the Amy Cuddy one about body language. It's a really good one. I see you know it. She says that if you stand like this for 20 seconds before you have to do something where you have to be strong, you'll be stronger. And that's the Wonder Woman pose, which is my favorite. So I have been known to run into the ladies' room and stand like this. So just, I do. So, but TED started out about technology, entertainment, and design. and it was a conference. So TED isn't a person, it's actually technology, entertainment, and design. And now it's a website and a not-for-profit organization that is about ideas worth spreading. And the thing that I love is when you go to the website and it says TED, ideas worth spreading, there's an asterisk. And next to the asterisk, it says, skeptics welcome. And I love that because it's not meant to be the end-all, be-all gospel of everything. It's meant to be ideas worth spreading. You can disagree, but at least you're going to learn something different and have somebody's different perspective. So we're going to talk about Brené Brown. She did a TED Talk in 2010 called The Power of Vulnerability. She has written 3 best-selling New York Times bestsellers, one of which I showed you at the beginning called Rising Strong. The TED Talk came after, I believe, her first book. And it caught on like wildfire. I actually didn't miss the memo on that one. She was on Oprah, and it just went like crazy. She has spent the last 13 years studying vulnerability, courage, worthiness, and shame. Now, who would think that there would even be research on worthiness, courage, vulnerability, and shame? Like, who would think that, right? But 13 years later, she's amassed a pile of research about it. So, the power of vulnerability. The title alone is ridiculous. How could vulnerability in any way, shape, or form be powerful? It's like an oxymoron. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. The research shows thousands of stories, interviews, emails, you name it, show that vulnerability is actually the birthplace of creativity, innovation, and change. It all starts with vulnerability. It's also the cornerstone of confidence. Now, I can see a little fidgeting in chairs. I myself feel a little uncomfortable with this statement. The vulnerability is the cornerstone of confidence, really? Like, ick, right? But let's just say, all of us in the room together, that this is true. That vulnerability is the cornerstone of confidence. How can we approach vulnerability as a way to build our confidence? We have to start from where we are. Each one of us is in a different place, with a different struggle, at a different point. Some people have forgiven the boss. Some people are still holding on to the baggage. Some people are feeling really great. Some people are feeling beat down. We all may be in a different place, but we have to start from where we are. And by the way, we have a lot more in common as a group than you may think. We're all just everyday people, right? Trying to do the best that we can do with what we have. And that is something to feel good about, right? To be surrounded by people who are all just trying to be the best people they can be. We're also all human beings. And human beings are hardwired for connection. It's the way you're built. The only people that are not hardwired for connection are sociopaths, right? But all human beings are hardwired for connection. It's why we're here. It gives us purpose. It gives us meaning. And it's neurobiological. And what the research showed, what Brené Brown's research showed, was that the one thing that unravels connection, the one thing that creates distance between people, is shame. Shame creates disconnects. Shame puts distance between you and the people around you. Now, if you were fidgeting over the vulnerability, you may be looking for the door right now, right? Because what am I doing? I'm talking about vulnerability, and now I'm going into shame. But this is it. This is the real stuff. The actual definition of shame is the painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable or improper done by oneself or another. So the painful feeling arising from the consciousness, from the awareness of something dishonorable. Brené Brown says that shame is the fear of disconnection. Let's talk about the difference between shame and guilt, right? Guilt says, I screwed up. Shame says, I'm a screw up. Now, guilt, I screwed up, you can make amends. You can get past that. Shame, I am a screw up, is a different thing. That creates distance. It separates you. And what do you do when you feel that way? And what makes you feel that way? Well, what makes you feel that way is, I'm not good enough, right? Underpinning a feeling of shame is, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not fill in the blank enough, whatever that thing is. And that's your shame. And what happens when you feel that way? Well, sorry. I've gestured in the wrong way. We have a gesture thing going here. Matt and I, we're like this now. What happens when you feel that way? You hide, you withdraw, you contract, you shrink, you go away, right? That's what happens when you feel shame. You pull back. Human beings are hardwired for connection, right? And if you're feeling shameful and you pull back, you're breaking your connections. Now, okay, good. What do you do about it? Well, there's a way to think about this that's grounded in the research. And I love that, right? Because I love facts and data. I don't really love theories. I like facts and data. And what Brené Brown did over that 13 years, those thousands of stories, all of those interviews, all of those emails, all of that tweeting, all of it. She took all of it and she analyzed it. She broke it up into two groups. People who believe that people who have a sense of belonging, people who have a sense of love and belonging, and people who yearn for it and always wonder if they're enough. And she separated those two people. And the group of people that have a strong sense of belonging and love, the one thing they all have in common is they believe that they are worthy of belonging and love. No matter what knocks them down, no matter what mistakes they make, they believe that they are worthy. And worthiness is what allows you to live a wholehearted life, right? So this idea of a wholehearted life, you're probably thinking, okay, great. First, I have my goal, then I have my guidelines, I have my non-negotiables, I've got my go-to list, like now I'm gonna live a wholehearted life. Like, how am I supposed to do that? Well, I never fear, I'm gonna help with that. It takes courage. And courage, to me, is another expression of the word confidence. When I think about courage, I think about confidence. And if we think about the original meaning of the word courage, it comes from the Latin word cur, which means heart. And it means to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. That's what courage is. The other half of this is that in order to live a wholehearted life, you have to have the courage to be imperfect. You were born that way, perfectly imperfect. You have to have the courage to be that. Now, where do you find this courage? Where does it come from? How do you get it if you feel like you don't have it? Well, it starts with compassion. Now, we're all familiar with the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Every religion under the sun has a form of the golden rule, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Native American spiritualism, and in Christianity, we say love your neighbor as yourself. The interesting thing about this golden rule, this interpretation of love your neighbor as yourself, is that it implies that you love yourself. It starts with you loving yourself. You can't very well love your neighbor if you don't actually love yourself, right? It kind of makes a little bit of sense when you think about it. So the key to this compassion is to be kind to yourself first. That's where it all starts. How are you going to get the courage, the confidence to trust, to go out in the world and take on the world and all its scary parts? Well, you're going to find that courage. The first step is to be kind to yourself. The second step is to connect through authenticity. Here's my favorite. You were born to be real, not perfect. And living wholeheartedly means that you are letting go of who you think you should be in order to be who you are. Good, bad, indifferent, perfect, imperfect. Letting go of who you think you should be in order to be who you are. It's about embracing your own imperfection and just putting yourself out there, trusting the people around you, having the confidence that there will be acceptance. And if there isn't, we have to find new people. And that's how you connect. That's how you keep the shame at bay, is to be authentic and see that connection. Don't hide it, be authentic. Show who you are, and let people connect with you. So we come back to the power of vulnerability. Now, I don't want you to think this is just about Brene Brown, who, my girl Brene, she doesn't know me, but I've referred like so many people to that TED Talk, and I hope you'll all go and watch it. I've watched it so many times, and every time I watch it, I get something new. It's not just about what Brene Brown has to say. Vulnerability as the birthplace for innovation and creativity and change and a host of other things is an idea that's been around for a while. Brené's research just showed it. So I have a quote here from Sigmund Freud. Out of vulnerabilities will come your strength. I have another quote here from a woman named Madeleine L'Engle, who was an American writer best known for young adult fiction, and she says, when we were children, we used to think that when we were grown up, we would no longer be vulnerable. But to grow up is to accept vulnerability. To be alive is to be vulnerable. And we have the late, great Bob Marley. Did anybody pick a Bob Marley song for their go-to? Anyone? Being vulnerable is the only way to allow your heart to feel true pleasure. And finally, my girl Brene, you can't get to courage without walking through vulnerability. Now, I'm going to go back to where I started. It all starts with you. You must be kind to yourself. You must believe in yourself. You must give yourself credit for where you've been and how you've made it through, and have the confidence to believe that you're going to get where you're going. It all starts with you. And it's a practice. It takes practice. It's a process. I've shared my journey a little bit. As an everyday person, I'm just an everyday person. And I practice, and I practice. And I use my go-tos, and I fall back on my non-negotiables. And I try to remember, these are my goals. What are my goals? What am I looking to do? Some days are easier than others. They are. Some, with all the success. Dave talked about my role and, biggest asset manager in the world, managing director, whatever the heck that means. I'm just an everyday person, and it's not always easy. So I am going to share with you some insight into how I keep my light switches in the open position, in the on position in real life. I'm going to share with you some photos of my office. So this is my bulletin board in my office. It's a little dark. I should have turned my light on. I took it with my cell phone, and I'm not that good at that. So anyway, you can see there are pictures, photos of my family, my husband and my kids and myself. On the upper right hand, you see a postcard that says, I can and I will, watch me. And I got this postcard from a girl who left the firm. And she sent me this postcard with a little gift, and on the back of the postcard, she wrote about how I was a mentor and how my belief in her had such an impact on her, and how she was so grateful and how she admired me. And I think this girl is all that in a bag of chips. I just love her, and I just think she's going to be wildly so successful no matter what she does. And I thought to myself, you know what? I need that. I had a tough year in 2015 at work. I need this. I'm putting it up. I can and I will. Watch it. Watch me. It's also my screensaver. You'll see on the left-hand side a handwritten post-it. It says, "Be wholehearted." I told you Brene was my like best friend. Be wholehearted. And this is next to my desk, where it's discreet. If people look at it, they will clearly be able to see it, but it's not kind of out there. It's fairly discreet in my office. The next picture is not discreet. This is my wall. The pictures I'll get to, but the saying says, "She believed she could, so she did." I received this for my birthday from a friend of mine who lives in Florida, who, you know when you meet someone and you think, oh my gosh, what a blessing. I am so glad that my path crossed with this person. She is positive and upbeat and one of my biggest cheerleaders, and has become, over the last 4 or 5 years, an awesome friend of mine, and we met kind of randomly. So she made me this thing, and she wrote a lovely, lovely, beautiful birthday note to me with it. And it made me feel, like it choked me up, and it made me feel proud, and it made me feel grateful, and it made me feel confident. And I thought, oh, where should I put it? Should I put it in my basement where I work out? I'll put it in my basement. And then I thought to myself, you know what? No, I think I should put it at work. And then I thought, oh gosh, how can I put "she believed she could, so she did" in my office for the world to see? Like, everybody's coming in and out of that office. Like, what are they going to think? Is that going to be taken, like, how is that going to be viewed? And then I thought to myself, I don't really care how that's going to be viewed. I think this thing is awesome. And someone who loves me gave it to me. And I am putting, that's right, the little engine that could. I am putting it up. So the pictures next to it, on the upper picture, is a photo of 3 women. One is me, one is a girl that I work with, and one is the first Prime Minister of Scotland, who is a woman. And I got a chance to meet her at an event, so we got that framed and put it up. The other picture is a picture of me and Hillary Clinton, that I had taken at an event. And whatever your politics are, you can't argue with her being a pretty powerful woman. So I call this my wall of girl power. And when people come in and they make a comment, I say, oh, that's my wall of girl power. And so I can see this every day, and so can everyone else. So I've shown you my bulletin board, which is relatively discreet. And I've shown you this, which is out there for the world to see. And now I'm going to show you a secret, and then I'll have to kill you. So this is my monitor at work. And this is the little tiny piece of paper that's up at the top of my monitor. And it says, "Don't forget how amazing you are, and don't settle for those who don't see it." I received an email from a friend of mine who left the firm, a different friend who left the firm to pursue a crazy dream. She's traveling around Asia. She's spending 3 months in Bali, and she sent me an email to catch me up on what's happening with her. I admire her for having that courage. And she sent me the email, and the second to last line was, "Don't forget how amazing you are, and don't settle for those who don't see it." And I was having a really bad day. And I read that, and I sat straight up in my chair, and I put my shoulders back, and I put my chin up, and I thought, she's right. But it made me feel like, it made me sit up straight. So I cut it out, and I put it on the top of my monitor, where nobody else can see it but me. And I don't see it every day. I don't see that every day. It becomes part of the furniture. But some days when I'm challenged and I'm sitting and I'm looking at my computer and I hang up the phone and I think, oh, I look and I see it. Don't forget how amazing you are, and don't settle for people who don't see it. It's my favorite. Now I'm going to really end here, where we started. What we are is God's gift to us. What we become is our gift to God. Thank you very much for your time.